momentarily. First, if you haven't already, if you'd be kindly silence your cell phones, and we'll bring the family in shortly. Also, we're trying to locate Mark Schoenbrunn and Gina Harris. Are you all in this section? No? Okay. All right, we'll be starting in a few minutes. Thank you.
Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then to wisdom, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion. We see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey made stage by stage to life everlasting. We are here today to say goodbye to someone that achieved many good and great things in her life, but for whom today we have to say, Lechi Beshalom, go in peace. We are here today to honor Joyce Hartman Karpay, someone that during the course of her life provided great sunlight and warmth to so many people. Joyce was a bright light in the world. She always had a big smile and a kind word for everyone she met. Her biggest joy in life was her family, and she was the most faithful friend a person could ever wish for. She was someone who was always there for you. She was a very devoted person. Joyce had been a long-standing and heartfelt member of our synagogue, Rodef Sholom, and also of our larger Jewish community for decades. After her family, Joyce was very passionate about her love for Judaism and for Israel. She was involved one way or another in just about every Jewish organization in the Tampa Bay area. To name just a few, Hadassah, Lion of Judea, the Holocaust Museum, the JCC, Unions of Christians and Jews, Tampa Jewish Family Services. She was the president of the Bnei Brit Girls. She was an involved member of AIPAC and supported many ongoing initiatives in Israel itself. Joyce has always used her love of theater to advance Jewish causes and to educate us on what it means to be a Jew in America. She has been a theater actress, director, and producer, and she even staged a production here at Rodef Sholom. She was a lover and supporter of the arts, being theater, classical music, or opera. As a strong supporter of Rodef Sholom's sisterhood, she has a long history of supporting many of our synagogue's most important programs, such as the Anzac Interfaith Tea. She loved to travel, she loved to cook, and she hosted all different kinds of evenings, from simple birthdays, celebrations, to big events. Joyce Hartman Karpay was always joyful and always present. She was present at our last community events, the Rosh Hashanah community dinner and the Tashlich Honavot that happened last Sunday. When we reflect on the life and accomplishments of Joyce, we can say, Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Blessed be the name of God's glorious majesty forever and ever, in gratitude for bestowing upon us such an unusual and incredible individual. We are grateful to God for having given us the privilege of knowing Joyce. May her memory and example be always for a blessing. We are going to start now the ceremony with the recitation of Tehillim, of Psalms of David, and we are trying to accompany the neshama, the soul of Joyce, in her new journey. The first one talks about the Eshet Hail, the woman of valor. It talks about all the good deeds that we can find in a great person, and it's very appropriate for Joyce. Someone who showered her loved ones with so much wisdom, so much love, and so much nourishment. אשת חיל ממצא ורחוק מפנינים מכרע, בתחווה לבעלה ושלל לא יחסר, מרתה אותו ולא רע כל ימי חייה, והרשת צמר ופשתי מבטס וחפץ כפיה, פיה פתחה בחוכמה ותורת חסד על לשונה, צופי הליכות ביתה ולחם עצלות לא תאכל, קמו בניה וישרוה בעלה ויללה, רבות בנות עשו חיל והטלית על כולנה, שכרחם בהבל היופי, אישה יראת אדוני תתהלל, תנו לה מפרי ידיה וייללוה בשערים מעשיה. A woman of valor who can find far beyond pearls is her value. Her children rise and celebrate her. Many daughters have attained valor, but you, Joyce, have surpassed them all. False is grace and vain is beauty, a God-fearing woman, she should be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and she will be praised at the gates by her very own deeds. The second psalm is Psalm number 23. מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אכסר, בנודש ירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני, נפשי ישובב ינחני, ממגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי הלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי, שמתך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב החסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. A song of David. God is my shepherd, I don't need anything else. He lays me down in green grass, he leads me by calm waters, he refreshes my soul. He leads me in the way of justice for the sake of his own name. Even if I walk in the valley in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, because I know you are with me. Your rod, your staff, and your support comfort me. I hope that only goodness and kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in God's house forever. I would like to invite now Rabbi Richard Birnholz to recite a psalm.
Before I offer a song in memory of Joyce, who I will miss greatly because she was so much a part of my life and a part of the life of this community, I would first like to say a few words, David, about you. When I asked you what you thought your mother would most want to be remembered for, you said, as you thought for a moment, two things. First, that she did everything she could to pass on her Jewish tradition to others and to the ages. Indeed, with everybody she touched, she gave not only her joy, but her love of Judaism and her love of Israel. And she did that, David, not only with you and the family, but with everybody, whether it be at a bar bat mitzvah, a family that she was settling with and working with on their celebration, whether she was calming down a nervous mom or dad or bar bat mitzvah student. She wanted that celebration to be something that would be remembered. She was organized. Also, she touched the non-Jewish community with her love of Judaism and was a living example of what it means to be a Jew and care about not only the Jewish community, but the greater community as well. The other triumph with which she would have been proud, you said, is her love of celebrating with family. Joyce was the consummate hostess, and when she could celebrate Jewish holidays around a family table, her deepest dreams were fulfilled. But of all the things that I remember her for most, David, is in raising a son like you. The rabbis teach, we need not raise monuments to our beloved dead because their children are their monuments. This is certainly the case for Joyce. A list of achievements and a list of activities from a person's life are important. But for a mom to help create a son like you, who is a loving husband to Becky, a loving father to Eve and to Hannah, a calm and steadying presence, no matter what, a good and fair man whose first instinct is to help others, and one who was a public voice both for Judaism and the Israel that Joyce held so dear. To me, this has to be a most enduring and precious gift of her long life. Good children don't come along automatically. They need good parents. And this, I believe, was certainly your greatest moment and the gift that you gave her. Best of all, no matter what else happened to her along the way, your mom knew she was safe as long as you, David, were there. Joyce's stated goal, spoken as she said it, on a documentary about her family and life that few people knew about, and in just a few final sentences that made it to the script but not to the documentary itself, Joyce said the following. She said, each of us has the responsibility of practicing tikkun olam, to leave the world a better place than the way we found it. Very simple, but a beautiful summation of her life. Joyce Karpay did just that, and we are all the richer because she did. Zecher livracha. May the memory of Joyce Hartman and Joyce Karpay's, may the memory of her beauty remain as an everlasting blessing. Amen. The 121st Psalm, Esa Einai El Heharim. I will lift mine eyes unto the mountains. From whence shall my help come? My help cometh from God, who made heaven and earth. God will not suffer your foot to be moved. God that keepeth you will not slumber. Behold, God that keeps Israel does neither slumber nor sleep. God is your keeper. God is your shade upon your right hand. The sun shall not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. God shall keep you from all evil. He shall keep your soul. God shall guard your going out and your coming in from this day forth and forever. Amen.
In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach, yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed is God's name. An ancient people, we are well acquainted with grief and with the valley of shadows. Death and sorrow are no strangers to us. Yet the centuries have taught us that a good name endures beyond the grave, that there's strength in faith. With Job, we say, Adonai natan, God, you have given. You gave us Joyce, who will never be forgotten. And for all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God, you've taken away. And now we pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and love, as we pray for the strength to say, Yehi Shem Adonai Mevorach, blessed is God's name, now and forever. In a moment, we'll hear some stories and reflections from members of Joyce's family. I know we all have stories and reflections, stories that we look forward to sharing with the family later today and in the coming days. But let's now take a moment of our own silent prayer, meditation, reflection, to think of our Joyce stories, and most importantly, the ways in which Joyce will continue to live on through each of us and in our community. Yihiyu l'ratzon imrei fiv v'hegyon libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and our Redeemer. We'll hear first from Joyce's son, David.
I first want to thank you all for coming. Your collective presence is very comforting, including the many that I know are on live stream. Thank you all so very much. Mom had 3 wishes associated with her passing. First, she did not want to excessively suffer. When the time comes, pull the plug. I heard her say over and over. We all understand this prayer and have seen what can happen when it is not granted. Mom's passing from consciousness to unconsciousness was instantaneous, and she was active to the end, including socially, intellectually, and physically, even athletically. She passed during a Pilates class. Yeah. As a bonus, she was even accompanied by her longtime friend, Sarah Scher. The success of that dream of Mom's was on her plate and on God's plate, and her wish was granted to perfection. Thank you, Sarah, for being there for Mom and for all that you did at that time. I do understand that this must have been a very difficult experience, and I am so sorry, Sarah. But it is so comforting to know that even if Mom did pass quickly, she was also surrounded by friends. Now, there's a downside to this particular wish, though granted, because when somebody passes so quickly, there is no opportunity to say goodbye. If only we had had 1 hour, even 5 minutes. So there is a lesson here, as there was so many other lessons in Mom's life. Don't wait. Her second wish, that she not be a burden to those she loved during her demise. We all get it. Mom was granted this wish in spades. She was hardly a burden. Quite to the contrary. Mom was a rock and a comfort to so many of us, and she will be so missed. Well, that's 2 out of 3. And Mom and the Lord, acting in concert, hit grand slams on both. But it's now time to address Mom's third wish, from which I'm trying to gather strength. Her third wish was that any funeral or other gatherings that might be held in her honor not be limited to mourning, but also primarily be a celebration of her life, a life that she loved to its end. Now that's partly on me right now, having discussed this, that I promised with Mom that I would try, and I ask all of you to feel free to help me if you can. It's a tall order, I know, but the material for such a celebration is abundant. Mom could be described as an extrovert with a big, kind, open, and loving heart. Love just flowed from her to anybody who was open to it, and in return, she received much love. Not just like, but love. That's how love works. The more you give, the more you receive in return. Mom also had a presence about her. When she walked into a room, defenses fell and the oxygen was slightly removed. She was irresistible. And I know that wasn't just to me, I saw it over and over again. Okay. Mom was born in 1935. She was going to turn 88 old in 2 months. She lived in Tampa for her entire life, with the exception of attending college at the University of Florida in Gainesville, where and when she received her degree, married my father, had her first child, my sister. Some of you will remember her parents. A lot of you will remember her parents. I can see that. Louis and Lillian Schomburn. Their home was on Davis Islands. Grandpa was president of this very synagogue in 1963. Yes, Mom came by her Jewish roots at a very early age. Mom was the oldest of 4 children, all of whom are here today. All lived in Tampa either for all or most of their lives. If you know them and see them, please give them a hug, because they need it. They are Gina Harris, Harvey Schomburn, and Mark Schomburn. Mom is also survived by 13 grandchildren and step-grandchildren, as well as 10 step-grandchildren. They are too numerous to mention, but she loved them all, and so many of them are here today. Love was always Mom's default setting, and many of them have traveled from afar to be here today to say goodbye, whether from California or Chicago, Illinois, or Texas, and all other parts of the country, many other parts of the country. Mom's life was not all good nor all easy, as many of you know. She was predeceased by 2 of her children, Robin and Jonathan. Of course, these dual tragedies affected her very deeply. There was pure, long-term, really permanent, emotional pain and suffering. I remember many a painful yahrzeit and Mother's Day. But out of these tragic events, it's a celebration, but out of these tragic events came her deep appreciation for the value of life and family and loved ones. Perhaps you noticed how quickly Mom was to love and be loved in return. Mom had an incredibly active life, much of which was inspired by her Jewish faith and her Jewish community. Let me help explain by example. Mom passed away on Tuesday afternoon, Erev Yom Kippur, just hours before the beginning of a very important Jewish holiday. What if she had been blessed with surviving for just one more day? Well, she and her brother Harvey would have been honored just hours later by opening that ark that is behind me and that they did together each year, during the Kol Ami service. Well, at 8 a.m. the next morning, she would have arrived at Sharet Tzedek Synagogue, where she would have witnessed her 14-year-old granddaughter read from the Torah during the Sharet Tzedek Yom Kippur service. Then she and Ron Lasday would have attended the evening service together right here. Then she and Ron would have come to Becky's and my house, our home, for a large breakfast event where she would have been surrounded by many family and friends. She would then have gone home happy and exhausted and started all over again the next day. That's how wonderful her life was, because it was so full. Mom loved being Jewish, and her endeavors in the Jewish community and with their worthy causes were many. As a child, starting at the beginning, she was involved with Young Judea. She was the Purim queen at the Palm Avenue Rodef Sholem Synagogue. Many of you may remember that on Palm Avenue. She was also at USY, the United Synagogue Youth, an organization for Jewish teens. She was a member of AE Phi sorority. My father was a TEP, both at the University of Florida. She was always involved with the Tampa JCC Federation. It used to be the JCC and the Federation, then it became the JCC Federation together, where she was a Lion of Judah contributor of money, but she also contributed her time and her heart. She was a big sponsor of AIPAC, the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, and made several trips to the Washington Conference. She was a lifelong member of Hadassah, a founding Tampa member, a past president, and with Robert Hartman endowed a room at the Jerusalem Hospital in Jerusalem, something that many of the Hartmans and I just visited almost exactly 1 year ago today. She was involved with the Tampa Jewish Family Services, where she gave time and treasure. She was involved with Israeli Bonds, went to many a rally, made many a purchase. Often Mom's gifts were either Israeli bonds or trees planted in Israel. She was very involved with the Florida Holocaust Museum, not just with her money, but she was involved in locating and interviewing many Holocaust survivors. Then there was the Center of Jewish and Catholic Studies. Then there was the Union of Christians and Jews interfaith activities. She helped endow a chair at St. Leo College. It was her belief that the best way forward for the religious and political worlds was to have constant dialogue between the clergies of all religions. She was partly inspired by her family member Ann Zach, who started that organization, and by Rabbi Richard Bernholtz, who is always one of its most notable members. She was, super importantly, a lifelong member of Rodef Sholem Synagogue. I don't mean a few decades. I mean at least 83 of her 88 years, if in fact she wasn't a member when she was in Gainesville going to school. Think about that one for a minute. Saw a lot of change. She was also a member of Sharet Tzedek Synagogue because she loves the place, she loves the clergy, and she loved her grandchildren. She also is involved, though, of course, in many non-Jewish endeavors. The arts and education and children's needs were important to Mom. The Performing Arts Center and the Patel Conservatory were the beneficiaries of tremendous gifts of hers and Mr. Karpay. Her three granddaughters and step-granddaughters, Tessa, Hannah, and Eve, all significantly attended the Patel Conservatory at the Performing Arts Center for many years, and Eve, her youngest, still does. She was a contributor to the Florida Symphony, the Florida Opera, the University of South Florida. She endowed a chair at St. Leo's College, And she was also, I love this one, involved with Shriners Hospital. You know, those are very ill children. Most recently, with visits to the hospital with Pumpkin, her dog. Something inspired by my grandfather on the other side of the family that some of you will remember, Barney Anton, who visited hospitals for many years prior to his passing. That was his thing, and something for us to think about. To understand the true depth of Mom's involvement and commitment, all you needed to do was, well, look at her quite active handwritten calendar, which I did the other day, where she spent her time. Look at her checkbook, where she sent her treasure. Or, as I know, look at her IRA, because Mom had enough. Mom had a 12-year-old car, she didn't care. Mom lived well, she didn't need to live super well. Why drive a Rolls Royce when you can give the money to someone else and drive a used Cadillac? So, if you look at our IRA statements, most of us rely on our IRAs for our support. Mom relied on her IRAs to support good causes. Mom loved Israel so very much, having made, really, I can only remember 7 trips, but it was more than 7 trips. On many of those trips, she brought family along, including myself, the Hartmans, and the Karpays. She sponsored a room at Hadassah Hospital with Robert Hartman, made many contributions and visits to Nev Mechael Children's Youth Village, loved children's causes, funded and purchased an ambulance in Israel with George Karpay, and so much more. And speaking of some of those individuals, Mom was married 3 times. All men of accomplishment and intellect. There was Leonard Anton, a CPA and attorney combo. That was very rare in the 1950s and 60s, and with him, she bore 3 children, of which I am one. Thereafter, she married Robert Hartman, a cancer research doctor at the University of South Florida, and a founding member of the USF Medical School. Then there was George Karpay, a well-known, incredible person of great accomplishment and generosity who requires no introduction here today. But I would be remiss not to mention the 4th love of her life. This one is very special because he is here today. Ron Lasday. If you know him and see him, he really needs a warm hug. I'm so sorry, Ron. You and she were an incredible couple. Okay. That one got to me, Ron. We're good. Mom loved freely and deeply and was very fortunate to have received so much love in return. Mom was also a career woman, a trendsetter and pioneer of her time, a leader from the beginning. Initially, Mom was a public school teacher. She loved teaching. She taught elementary school until she had 2 little children and her husband's law and accounting career took hold. Thereafter, after being a housewife and mom, she became a professional model and actress. She was in many TV commercials and lots of print ads. I remember that initially it was thrilling for Robin, Jonathan, and I to see her on TV or in the Tampa Tribune. Later it kind of became more passé because basically she was on all the time or in every paper. And so now I kind of saw that it was no big deal until my friends would point it out, then yeah, I get it. But then after acquiring some entertainment experience, she became a TV producer and host, a little bit deeper than just a model. There was women's point of view. She both hosted and directed it. It was a weekly television show on USF TV, and it lasted for approximately a decade. And again, she both produced it and hosted it. She then produced a documentary, Tony Pizzo's Tampa, a 12-part series of the history of Tampa, which is still used today, and of course you can find it at the Tampa Historical Society. After that, she started Joyce Hartman Weddings as a wedding consultant. It was a one-stop wedding planner place. She could do as little or as much as you wanted. You could do some of it yourself or just show up, and she did many notable weddings in Tampa. Many of you know that because a lot of people come to weddings. You probably went to several of them. And because of that, she branched out and wrote a book. What person doesn't want to write a book in their life? Secrets of a Bridal Consultant. You see a lot when you manage weddings. And you can still buy that on Amazon today. She would later volunteer her theatrical production talents. She and her brother Mark, there you are, produced and wrote something called The Rescuers, who some of you know. It's about non-Jewish heroes who saved Holocaust Jews and non-Jews in peril. Think of the movie Schindler's List for smaller operations. The first showing was right here. Then it went on the road. And the CD is still used by other entities today. So much of what Mom did started right here. She then, for our family, put together a piece of work called Family Tales, a more personal endeavor. Again with her brother Mark, she chronicles our family's history from Eastern Europe through the present here in Tampa, mostly in Tampa, so that our family would not forget where they came from and how successful and lucky they were. And if there are any family members here today that don't have this yet, though most of you do, let me know. I think I saw a ton of extra thumb drives at her house, and I have a few extras too. And then there's many more, but I know I have to cut this short, so I'll leave the theatrical stuff with Driving Miss Daisy. We all remember the movie. She put together and was Miss Daisy on the production that was done right here at Rhoda Sholem Synagogue just 4 years ago. Now think about it. 4 years ago, she memorized all those lines. So she still really had it. It's about prejudice in the Deep South, which dovetailed with so much other work she did about prejudice. Then there were the social events and parties that she was so well known for. There was Sukkot every year. We used to have a huge Sukkot on Lake Saddleback in Lutz. Richard Chad and I would build a huge sukkah. We'd have a large crowd, and this lasted approximately 20 years, when she then moved out of Lutz back to South Tampa, and it was taken over by Marilyn Whitner, where it lasted also for many years. There were many Passovers that she put together. Those were somewhat replaced by Becky and I when we did some Passovers, but she had a lot of them, and that's actually where her sister Gina met her beloved husband, Will Harris, and of course they got married not long after that. Then there were her Hanukkah parties, and there were a lot of them, a lot of dreidels swirling. Well, it took a village to make Mom happy, but as Barbara Streisand said, people, you already know what this is, people who love people are the luckiest people in the world, and that was Mom. Well, thank you for allowing me to celebrate the life of Joyce Hartman Karpay. Mom will now live on through your memories and her examples. I hope that some of you will join us for one or more of 3 nights at my family's home, the home of Becky, myself, Hannah, and Eve, tonight and on Monday and Tuesday. at 6:30, not for a traditional Shiva, because this is a holiday, but for a celebration of Mom's life. Yes, it's a party, because that's what you do during Jewish holidays. But there will still be prayer. Thank you, Rabbi, for attending. Good food, good drink, memories, and yes, thanks to my dear friend Richard Chad, a sukkah structure in the backyard. I'll just throw out special thanks to Eric Weinstein, who heard about Mom's passing, who runs Zudar's. Zudar's is closed on Sunday. He opened it so he could make what we needed for these get-togethers. That's just kind of the person Mom was. And of course, thanks to Cindy Spahn, who's helping too. Thank you all.
Dr. Robert Hartman, Jr.
Thank you, David, for that eloquent description of the life of a woman who is so very special and whom we all love. I'm Dr. Robert Hartman, Jr. from California. Joyce was married to my dad, Dr. Robert Hartman, Sr., and that's how our whole family joined the Anton Schonbrunn family in meeting Joyce. I first met Joyce over 4.5 decades ago. Came to Tampa. Dad was talking about this woman he had met, and I came to Tampa, met Joyce, and she's so engaging. And one of my first questions was, Joyce, how did you meet Dad? And it was through women's point of view. She was looking for someone who could do some research and specialty information for her television program on Laetrile. And someone said, oh, there's this new cancer specialist at UCSF. Perhaps we should see if you could talk with him. So this discussion was arranged, and Joyce came away from it going, my goodness, that fellow is smart, he's articulate, he's handsome, and he's unattached. Then she said, and he's devoutly religious. Happens to be Catholicism, but he's still devoutly religious. And he's got a bucket load of kids, several of them are here, of whom are here today. So Joyce was kind of smitten by him. Dad, being Dad, was sort of like, who knows what he was thinking. But Joyce said, I need some more expertise from a cancer specialist. And called Dad several times and said, well, why don't we get together and do it? Dad said, oh, we can just do it over the phone, talk. Finally, someone said to Dr. Robert Hartman, Bob, I think she wants to really meet with you. So Dad finally, the light bulb goes on and Dad arranges a date. So where does he arrange the date? He calls Joyce and says, let's meet for coffee at the restaurant and bar at the Holiday Inn, just right over here on Fowler. Joyce says yes, and then as she's getting ready for it, she goes, what am I doing meeting someone I barely know at a bar at a hotel? Fortunately for all of us, Joyce showed up for that date, and a truly enchanted love story with my father began. This love story transformed the rest of their lives. They were in their middle ages, and they ended up falling so deeply in love. I was privileged to be the best man at their wedding in 1977. So I got up the night before at the rehearsal dinner, and I said, I'd like to read a warning to Joyce. So I said, Joyce, he can't cook. He'll never wash a dish. He doesn't know how to mow the lawn. I said, he snores so loudly. He belches, he farts, he does. And Joyce came up to me just in such a very Joyce move and put her hands on my cheeks and said, honey, I know all that and I love him dearly. This unconditional love that my dad and Joyce had for each other, Joyce really extended to his large Catholic family, to all of us, to her stepchildren, her step-grandchildren, our friends. And she also had this tremendous love of travel. So she traveled, as David alluded to, traveled to Israel with Hartman family members. She started a tradition where when her step-grandchildren would graduate from high school or college, they would go on trips. Alaska cruise, New York City. She would just, Joyce and the grandkids, and Harvey went also, just to get together to know the family better. She loved travel. She passed that on to all of us. One of the things that I will always most admire Joyce Hartman Karpay for was for taking care of our father. They had a wonderful, active marriage, and then Dad became ill. And for the last years of his life, it was very difficult. He needed constant care. Joyce kept him at home doing an incredible job for as long as she could. And we will be forever grateful to Joyce Hartman Karpay, to the woman that she was, for taking care of our dad. Over the last couple of days, been over to Joyce's condominium, my brother Richard's house, and we hit this treasure trove of photo albums of Dad and Joyce and of the family and of their travel. Israel, New York, South America, all over, and just these beautiful, beautiful memories. And then Wendy, my sister-in-law, found a plastic container. Joyce kept lots of things, but she kept every letter that my dad wrote to her. And he started writing letters to her shortly after they met. Many of these were love letters. Many of them were just really beautiful. My Contessa, unconditional love. You know, you have changed my life. Some of them were a little risque. We decided not to bring the letters and to read them here, but it just points out what a wonderful woman Joyce was, to integrate our family into her family, our friends into her friends. And the special privilege this year in 2022 was that my nephew Michael got married to Chateau in Houston, and Joyce flew in for the wedding and was the belle of the ball. And then 3 weeks ago yesterday, our daughter Hallie got married to Marshall, just a wonderful wedding up in Wisconsin. And Grandma Joyce was the hit of the wedding. After the wedding, we'd get calls, we'd get emails and texts. How's Grandma Joyce? When the hurricane came nearby, they were texting, is Grandma Joyce okay? Is Grandma Joyce okay? Just the impact that she had on all of us. And it was 3 weeks ago today that she hosted, again, her prime. She hosted a post-wedding brunch for approximately 100 people in Wisconsin. It just was the life of the party, working the party and doing that again. Oh, honey, how are you? David, I don't have your eloquence. That was a beautiful speech that you did. But the heartfelt warmth extends from all of us to all of you who know Joyce, who loved Joyce, and what a very special person she was. She influenced all of our lives. And for that, we're very appreciative. Joyce Hartman Karpay.
Richard Hartman.
Good afternoon. I'll admit I'm going to try to get through this. My name is Richard Hartman. As you know, I'm one of 3 stepsons of Joyce. There's Bobby, who you heard just preceding me from California. My brother David from Jacksonville, who couldn't be here today. I've lived here in Tampa and have known Joyce for 45 years. Gracious, dignified, caring, supportive, and incurable romantic. One who always rooted for the underdog, giving, a warm heart, loving. Those words and many more describe Joyce Hartman Karpay. As said before, Joyce could walk into any room and light it up with her dramatic, Oscar-winning performance and flair. The last time I was here, and I didn't write this down, but the last time I was here, I sat in that row and I watched her driving Miss Daisy. She had that accent down. It was so wonderful. Joyce had a book in her condo. It's titled Last Wishes, a handbook to guide your survivors. She never wrote one word in that book. She didn't have to. She lived it. So appropriately, Joyce, she did paperclip one page titled, I would like to wear the following jewelry. She would have said, I'm not wearing a talent in my casket. It will clash with my outfit. I know Fran Schwartz wants to yell out right now, that's my Joycey. Go ahead, Fran, that's your cue. 1 year after Joyce and my father were married in 1977, they asked me to design their new home. I took a year off of college, moved to Tampa to design and construct their home on Lake Saddleback. Joyce was meticulous in every detail, to the point of driving me crazy. It's been said that an architect should never design a home for a relative. I didn't listen to that one. But Joyce turned that house I designed into a home with love and care, where she proudly, as you've been told before, hosted many parties and events, sukkahs, and weddings by the lakeside. After all, she was the wedding planner. Many of you here attended those events, and what a host she was. As mentioned before, Joyce was involved in so many wonderful organizations, giving her time, giving her talents, her treasures. Hadassah, APAC, where she took my wife Wendy many times to Washington, D.C., the Performing Arts Center, the Tampa Jewish Federation, Interfaith Forums, USF, the JCC, Hillel, and this synagogue, Rodolph Shalom, and many more. Joyce would always repeat the story of when we first met. And it was at the swimming pool in my father's apartment in Carrollwood Apartments. I was 23 years old, very tanned, and believe it or not, quite handsome. As I was coming out of the pool, Joyce said it was like a god coming out of the water. She said that day I won her heart. From then on, she won mine. There were two things that really endeared me to Joyce. First, the way she so loved my father, a devout Catholic. Joyce embraced his religion and he embraced hers. There was actually at the wedding ceremony a priest and a rabbi. Joyce would attend church with my dad, and he would join her here at this temple. My father suffered a stroke when he was 82 years old. He was bedridden and wheelchair bound for the next 4 years. Joyce kept him out of a nursing home for all that time. She brushed his teeth. She spoon-fed him. She cleaned up after him every day for 4 years. She was his caregiver at the remodeled condo at 345 Bayshore, right down the street. That was the second architectural project I did for Joyce. I suppose I just didn't learn. Joyce cared for my father, the love of her life, to the detriment of her health. And she came to me one day and said, "Richard, I can't do this anymore." I said, "I know." She said, "I have to put him in a nursing home." I said, "I know." I told Joyce he would not live long at Menorah Manor without her love and care. He died there less than 3 months later. The second thing that really endeared me to Joyce was the way she accepted my family and my extended family. Joyce and my wife, Wendy, it was like they were super glued together. They so loved each other. And whenever Joyce would phone Wendy and say, "I can't get my computer to work," or "I can't open an app on my iPhone," or "I can't get my printer to print," Wendy would drop everything she was doing to be at Joyce's side. Wendy was with David Anton at Joyce's side when she passed away at 6 p.m. this past Tuesday at St. Joseph's Hospital. Joyce, who would have been 88 years old in mid-January, suffered massive stroke during a Pilates class, and she so loved Pilates classes. She never stopped being active, even to the end. She was like the Energizer Bunny. Joyce embraced my 3 children, Kaiser, Tessa, and JJ, as if they were her own grandchildren. She did that with all my father's grandkids. Megan and Michael, they were my sister Kathy and her husband Elton's children. Aaron and Hallie, my brother Dr. Bob, and Mel's 2 girls. Liz and Allie, my sister Meg and Al's 2 daughters, and Justin and Amber, my brother David's 2 children. Joyce made the rounds this past year, almost as if it were her goodbye tour. This past April, my family took Joyce to Monticello, Florida, up in the Panhandle, for my Aunt Mary's 99th birthday party. My Aunt Mary and Joyce were very close. We traveled together to 2 out-of-state weddings over the last 6 months. The one my brother mentioned in Texas, south of Houston, for Michael and Chatou's wedding. Michael is here today from California. Just 3 weeks ago, we were together in Kohler, Wisconsin for Hallie Marshall's wedding. The newlyweds are here today. Several months ago, Joyce hosted a surprise 25th wedding anniversary party for me and my wife Wendy at Jackson Bistro on Harbor Island for almost 70 guests. Some of you here today were there. Last week, Joyce stayed with us during Hurricane Ian. I was lucky to say these last 3 words to her as I hugged her for the last time. I love you. Joyce was a wonderful soul. Joyce will always be missed. Joyce will always be loved. Joyce will always be here with all of us. Thank you.
JJ?
Hello, my name is J.J. Hartman. I'm the proud son of Wendy and Richard Hartman. And I just wanted to say how much I love my grandma. I love you so much, honey. These are the words that my grandma said to me every time she said hello and goodbye. She did truly love me, and she truly loved everybody here. She was the most caring and loving person I knew. I can never repay her for what she did for me. She paid for a 2-week trip to Israel, where I grew in my faith. And it was a blast for me and my family. She made me be able to go to Jesuit by paying my tuition. And she taught me how to be a gentleman and a man of faith. She embodies everything I want to be when I grow up. Loving, kind, and awesome. She was an awesome grandma, from her jokes to her dance moves. And who can't forget her style? Even in her 80s, she looked like a stud. But in all seriousness, she will deeply be missed by everybody here. I will miss her smile. I will miss her laughter and lectures about the Jewish faith to me. I will miss her constant, please, please, let me pay for the bill this time. But the thing I will miss the most is when she says, I love you so much, honey. Thank you.
In addition to the 3 wishes that we heard about from David, I think there might have been 2 more wishes that Joyce would have had if she knew she could. We know how much Joyce loved her Judaism. There wasn't a Jewish organization in Tampa that she wasn't involved in. This was something she learned from her parents, Louis and Lillian, Zichronam Livracha, may their memory be a blessing. But I think it went far beyond even what they could have ever dreamed for their daughter. So for Joyce to have 4 rabbis from 3 different congregations, Rabbi Dabrowski will be participating in the graveside service, each of which held a special place in her heart, participating in her service, I think would also have fulfilled a wish of hers. And while officially Shiva is cut short by the beginning of the holiday of Sukkot, once again for Joyce's loved ones to be able to once again gather together, celebrating her life under and around the sukkah, could not be more appropriate. And I think that might have been another wish. Sukkot is all about welcoming guests, spending time with friends and family, celebrating one's community, all defining elements of Joyce's life. And on Sukkot we say, V'samachta b'chagecha, and you shall rejoice, be happy in your festival. And as Rabbi Kornmorsel pointed out the other day, comparing the holiday of Sukkot along with Joyce's Hebrew name, which is Gilah, meaning joy, which is also, of course, found in the name Joyce. This could not have been more appropriate. Joyce's face was always shining, and while, as we know, she faced far too much adversity in her life, adversity that also created complexity, she responded by continuing to seek out those joyous moments, relishing in them whenever she could. When did we ever see Joyce out in our community when she wasn't beaming, light emanating from her smile for the world to share? And so we rejoice in our festival, and we rejoice in the lessons that we can learn from Joyce Hartman Karpay. In addition to learning a love of Judaism from her parents, Gina, Harvey, and Mark, I know you joined your sister in learning the value of hard work and love and commitment to your community. While Joyce was an only child until she was 12, I know that she loved the gifts that she would receive in the three of you every year and a half or so after that. And how beautiful that the four of you were able to remain so close. One of my fondest memories of Joyce is after she had been to Sharet Tzedek and saw that we were starting to use screens and projectors regularly in our service, she said, "Of course, I'm going to take him the DVD of The Rescuers," wanting to make sure that I knew that we could be a venue. Her face was definitely shining as she explained the program to me. I wish we had had the opportunity to do so. But to Mark and Gina, how special it must have been for you all to work on that project together. Growing up at Rodef Shalom, we heard of all of Joyce's Jewish involvement in her youth, and it was through this involvement that she first met Leonard Anton. They were both part of a group of young people who grew up in the tight-knit Tampa Jewish community at the time, who went to Gainesville to study at the University of Florida. And it was part of that group that Joyce and Leonard would reconnect and get married. Joyce would begin her first career teaching elementary school in Gainesville, and it was there that Robin, Zichrona Livracha, who we also remember today, was born. And after returning to Tampa, David and Jonathan, Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be a blessing, were both born, as the family lived on what David called, and I guess others called, Rodef Row on Davis Islands. David, you called growing up in Tampa in the 60s on Rivera Drive idyllic. It sounded like a 60s sitcom. Your mom was able to stay at home, taking care of you, Robin, and Jonathan, teaching you, along with your dad, that same love of Judaism with which they had grown up. And of course, that same passion for learning all things. She is a loving, doting mother and housewife, and David, you shared that you couldn't have asked for anything more. Joyce and Leonard would divorce at a time when it was not so common, and life became more difficult for her, going back to work again at a time when most women in her social circle were not. She was the greatest mom before, and she was the greatest mom after, but things changed for sure. It must have been humbling for Joyce to work behind a counter at the mall, but she approached each day with the same smile she had the day before, that same joy. And it would be that smile and joy that would move her from the mall to the advertisements displayed at the mall, as Joyce became a model, which we know would lead to local television, where as host of Women's Point of View, she would interview that new doctor in town, one USF had just snagged from Vanderbilt, Dr. Robert Hartman. It must have been quite the interview. Love at first question. And while the interview might not have even made it on the air, I learned, a true love story would ensue. Now we heard Bob and David use these words. Bob was very Catholic, and we've already established that Joyce was very Jewish, but they both already had their children, and they each had a deep respect for the other's connection to their religion. Bob became a lover of Judaism and Israel, and Joyce became passionate about Jewish-Catholic relations. I was truly honored, as I know was Rabbi Bernholtz, to get to spend time with Joyce on the National Advisory Board for St. Leo University's Center for Catholic Jewish Studies, and Matt Tapey, the director of the center, is here today. I know that the work of the center in many ways represented their truly special bond, even after Bob had passed. David, you shared that you couldn't have asked for a better stepdad. And we know, as we heard, Kathy, Robert, David, Richard, Meg, Ellen, and your families all feel the same way about Joyce as a stepmom. There was no step for the two of them, as you all immediately became one large extended family. How special that Joyce and Bob would live in their dream home designed by Richard. And while we know that he didn't have that same peaceful end as Joyce, we do know the comfort he received from having Joyce at his side, along with all of you. As Rabbi Bernholtz often shared, it takes an extremely special person to be able to love and be loved once, and to be able to be loved and be loved more than once requires someone even more remarkable. And in George Karpay, Joyce indeed found another love with whom to share her joy. George was, of course, so pleased to find out that the two of them had actually been on the same page of the Jewish press at one point much earlier in their Tampa Jewish lives. I think it was actually the Jewish Floridian at that point. And everyone knows, I think, George's logic as to why the two should be married only 9 months after starting to date. As George said, "I'm 80, you're 75, what are we waiting for?" While Joyce would tragically lose George as well, he too died peacefully as the two were enjoying their life together. And again, Joyce had too much joy and too much love to be alone. And Ron, how lucky the two of you were that Marilyn suggested that you might enjoy spending some time together. And for the two of you, you would spend so much time together these past 4 years. And it was to both Rodef Shalom and Shaarei Tzedek's benefit that you did, as we all have been able to see the two of you living out this chapter of your life with that special love and care for one another that the two of you shared. This was the love that Joyce had for so many, the love that she would love sharing with so many. Wendy shared with me that Joyce would rarely give a typical gift. You would never get a card with a $20 bill inside. Joyce gave experiences and memories. And when she took Wendy to the Straz to celebrate her birthday, Wendy definitely got a memory. She was running late for work and clearly nervous. With Joyce, of course, you always had the best seats, so the two were literally front and center, so Wendy couldn't just sneak out. So Wendy shared that Joyce took her hand, and as everyone stood up to applaud at the end of the show, Joyce bolted, pulling Wendy behind her, Joyce stepping on everyone's toes along the way. Joyce went above and beyond as she gave of herself, and as Wendy so gracefully put it, she would run over toes for you, and she did it so gracefully. In addition to being the holiday of Sukkot, we also find ourselves at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, as Moses is preparing for his death. We read that never again would there arise a prophet like Moses who saw God face to face. Surely the presence Joyce Hartman Karpay played in our community, in so many different facets of our community, would come close to giving her Moses status. But it goes further than that. When Moses met God face to face on Mount Sinai 40 years earlier, we read that his face shone, so much so that no one else could look at him. But he called Aaron and the chieftains close, he shared that light, and then he placed a veil over his face so he could be accessible to his people as he shared God's teaching, thus spreading that light even further. Joyce's face shone in a similar way. And she too, a giant in our community, shared her light. And I think at times contained her light so that it too could be shared with everyone. Joyce's joy, her passion, her light, her love were all contagious. And now it becomes our job to ensure that that joy, light, and love shine through each of us. No doubt it shines through you, David and your family, all of the Hartmans, Ron, all those she loved. And no doubt it continues to shine through Tampa's Jewish community and beyond. Joyce's name, Gila, quite fittingly, and again thank you to Rabbi Kornhorsel for pointing this out, appears in the Sheva Brachot, the blessings that are recited under the chuppah at every Jewish wedding. Gila, Rina, Ditza, V'chedva, Ahava, V'achava, Shalom, V'reu. So we praise you, Adonai, ruler of the universe, creator of joy and gladness, man and woman, love and kinship, peace and friendship. O God, may there always be heard in the cities of Israel and in the streets of Jerusalem the sounds of joy and happiness, the voice of the groom and the voice of the bride, the shouts of young people celebrating, the songs of children at play. We praise you, our God, who causes husband and wife to rejoice together. We praise you, God, who allowed Joyce to rejoice in so many beautiful ways during her life. May the sounds of her joy and happiness, those beautiful notes that came from her voice and her life, continue to inspire us every day. As Zichronat Tzadik Livracha, the memory of our beloved Joyce, continues to be our blessing. Amen.
Please rise for El Maler Rachamim. That is a prayer in which we ask God that the soul of our beloved one find perfect rest in Gan Eden in paradise. El Maler Rachamim שוכן במרומים, אמצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות כלושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים, את נשמת גילה בת אליעזר ולאה שהלכה לעולמה, ועבור שכל הניספים כאן מתפללים לעילוי נשמתה, וגן עדן תהי מנוחתה, לכן בעל הרחמים אז תראה בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, וצרור וצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח ושלום על משכבה, ונאמר Amen. God grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure, to the soul of Joyce Hartman Karpay, Gila Bat Eliezer Velea, who has gone to her eternal home. Her son, siblings, all her family and friends, both near and far, ask you, God, that Joyce find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And we say, Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi Kornhorsel, Rabbi Simon, Rabbi Bergholz. On behalf of the family, I want to thank everybody who came today to remember Joyce. I just want to announce that immediately following the services here, the interment will take place at Sharon Cemetery. Those who will be riding in procession with us, please put on your headlights to identify yourself as part of the procession. As we continue to the cemetery. After our attempt of trying to describe Joyce in the time that we have here, which is an impossible task, the sheriff's deputies who are waiting to escort us to the cemetery have asked that we get everything assembled and leave the parking lot expeditiously. So I'd like to ask, please, that we don't converse in the parking lot, that you please return to your car promptly. And again, as you know, the family will be receiving friends to share more stories and pay honor to Joyce over the next 3 evenings at the house of David and Becky Anton. Again, I want to thank you for your presence, and I'd like those who are serving today's altar to please come forward as the family, and we all accompany the casket from the sanctuary. Thank you.
job.
Very nice. Are you going to the gravesite?
Yes.
Yeah, see there. That was wonderful.